They clap for the brilliance. They quote the sharp lines. They admire the way your mind cuts through noise like it was born to dominate it. To them, it's genius clean, impressive, almost beautiful. But what they don't see is what it cost you. They don't see the sleepless nights where your thoughts refuse to shut up, the constant war inside your head where every idea came with a price. They don't feel the isolation that grows when you start seeing things differently than everyone else. Because intelligence doesn't just open doors. It also shows you things most people are lucky enough to never understand. They admire the result, but they fear the process. Because behind every sharp mind, there's a darker place. A place where doubt, overthinking, and brutal self-awareness live together. A place where you question everything, including yourself. Where you can't just switch it off and be normal, even if you wanted to. And the truth is, if they ever had to carry that weight, even for a moment, they wouldn't call it brilliance anymore. They admire intelligence the way people admire a sharp blade. From a distance, under the light, without ever asking how many times it had to be forged in fire to become that way. They see the precision, the control, the way your words land exactly where they need to. And they call it talent, they call it brilliance, they call it a gift. What they don't understand is that nothing about it feels like a gift when you're the one carrying it. Because intelligence isn't just knowing more, it's feeling more, noticing more, questioning everything until even the simplest things lose their innocence. It's walking into a room and reading every expression, every shift in tone, every hidden intention, whether you want to or not. It's seeing through people so clearly that their words start to sound hollow, like echoes of something they don't even believe themselves. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. They admire the answers you give, but they don't hear the noise it took to get there. The endless loops of thoughts that don't stop, that don't slow down, that keep pulling you deeper into analysis until your own mind feels like a maze with no exit. Every decision becomes a debate. Every idea gets dissected. Every possibility branches into 10 more, until clarity starts to feel like something you have to fight for. And while they're sleeping peacefully, your mind is still awake, replaying conversations, rewriting scenarios, questioning outcomes that haven't even happened yet. It doesn't rest. It doesn't switch off. It keeps going, because that's what it was trained to do. That's what made you intelligent in the first place. They admire the confidence in your voice, but they don't see the weight behind it. The constant awareness of consequences, the ability to predict outcomes, the burden of knowing exactly how things can go wrong before they even begin. It makes you cautious, calculated, sometimes distant, because when you see too much, you stop trusting things at face value. And then there's the isolation. Not the loud, obvious kind, but the quiet one that creeps in slowly. The kind where you're surrounded by people, but you still feel separate from them. Conversations start to feel shallow. Connections feel temporary, and you begin to realize that understanding others doesn't mean they understand you. They admire your perspective, but they don't realize it came from standing in places most people avoid, from thinking thoughts most people push away, from sitting with discomfort long enough that it became familiar. Intelligence doesn't protect you from darkness. It introduces you to it in ways that are hard to explain and even harder to escape. So they keep praising what they can see. The sharpness, the wit, the way you carry yourself like you've figured something out that they haven't, and you let them believe it. Because it's easier than explaining the truth, easier than telling them that behind every moment of clarity, there's a storm they would never volunteer to walk through. A sharp mind doesn't sit quietly. It doesn't stay in its place and behave the way people expect it to. It moves, it questions, it pulls everything apart just to see what's underneath. From the outside, it looks controlled, precise, almost effortless. But inside, it's loud. Not the kind of loud you can hear, the kind that never stops echoing. Every thought branches into another, and then another, until a single idea turns into a web you can't step out of. You don't just think, you analyze. You don't just observe, you dissect. A simple moment becomes a puzzle. A conversation becomes a layered script where every word carries intention, every pause means something, every expression hides a truth you can't ignore. It's not something you switch on. It's always there, running in the background like a machine that forgot how to power down. People think clarity is peace. They think seeing things clearly makes life easier. What they don't realize is that clarity often comes wrapped in chaos. Because when you see too much, you start noticing contradictions everywhere. In people, in systems, in yourself. Nothing stays simple. Every belief gets questioned, every assumption gets challenged, until even certainty starts to feel unstable. And that's where the chaos lies, not in confusion, but in awareness, in the constant realization that there's always more beneath the surface, more angles to consider, more truths that don't align neatly with each other. It creates a tension that never fully disappears, a pressure that builds quietly as your mind keeps turning, searching, refusing to settle. You replay things, not because you want to, but because your mind insists. A single conversation can come back in fragments, each time revealing something new, something you missed the first time. You catch patterns, inconsistencies, hidden meanings that weren't obvious before, and suddenly what seemed simple becomes complicated. And once it becomes complicated, it stays that way. Even your own thoughts don't feel safe. You question your motives, your reactions, your decisions, until you're not just thinking about the world. You're thinking about yourself, thinking about the world. It's layers on top of layers, awareness stacked so high that it starts to feel heavy. There's no escape from it, because wherever you go, your mind follows. People admire the results of that sharpness, the quick responses, the deep insights, the ability to understand things others overlook. They see the surface, the outcome, the moments where everything aligns and makes sense. They don't see the process behind it, the restless energy, the constant movement, the inability to just exist without analyzing every detail. And sometimes, the chaos isn't even dramatic. It's subtle. It's sitting in silence but not feeling calm. It's being physically still while your mind runs in circles. It's the quiet kind of unrest that doesn't show on your face, but never really leaves you alone. A sharp mind creates its own noise, not because it's broken, but because it's always searching, always digging, always trying to make sense of things that were never meant to be simple. Overthinking doesn't start as a weakness. It starts as control, a way to stay ahead, to predict, to prepare for anything that might go wrong. You tell yourself it's just awareness, just caution, just being smarter than the situation. And at first it works. You catch things others miss. You notice patterns. You connect dots. You stay one step ahead. It feels like an advantage. Then it stops feeling like one. Because the same mind that protects you begins to trap you. Every clear thought gets pulled apart, stretched in every direction, until it loses its shape. What should have been a simple decision turns into a chain reaction of possibilities, each one demanding attention, each one refusing to be ignored. You don't just think about what could happen. You think about what might happen if that happens, and then what follows after that. Clarity doesn't disappear all at once. It fades slowly, quietly, like something slipping through your fingers. You start with a solid idea, something that makes sense, something you're sure about. But then the questions come. What if it's wrong? What if there's something you're not seeing? What if there's a better option? And suddenly, certainty feels like arrogance, and doubt feels like responsibility. So you dig deeper. You revisit the same thought from every angle, hoping that one of them will feel right enough to settle on. But none of them do. Each perspective reveals something new, something that complicates it further. What used to be clear becomes layered, tangled, heavy. You don't trust the first answer anymore, or the second, or even the third. You keep going, convinced that somewhere beneath all that thinking, there's a perfect conclusion waiting for you. There isn't. Instead, there's noise, constant, persistent noise that fills every quiet moment. It follows you when you try to rest, when you try to focus on something else, when you try to escape into distraction. It doesn't matter what you're doing. Part of your mind is always somewhere else, replaying, analyzing, questioning. You start second, guessing things you never used to question. Your words, your actions, your intentions. A simple conversation turns into a mental replay where you examine every sentence, every reaction, every pause. Did you say too much? Did you say too little? Did they mean what they said, or was there something behind it? And the more you analyze it, the less certain you become. Even your instincts start to feel unreliable. You used to trust them, follow them without hesitation. Now they get caught in the same cycle, filtered through layers of doubt, until they don't feel like instincts anymore. They feel like guesses, and you don't trust guesses. People think overthinking is just thinking too much. They don't understand that it's thinking without relief, without pause, without that moment where your mind finally says, "This is enough." Because for you, it's never enough. There's always another angle, another possibility, another question waiting to be asked. And the worst part is, you're aware of it. You know it's happening while it's happening. You recognize the cycle, the pattern, the way it pulls you in deeper every time. But awareness doesn't stop it. If anything, it adds another layer to it, because now you're not just overthinking the situation, you're overthinking the fact that you're overthinking. What started as clarity becomes something else entirely. Not confusion in the obvious sense, but a kind of mental fog where everything feels uncertain, where every answer feels temporary, where even the simplest truths start to feel complicated, Once you look at them long enough, isolation doesn't always arrive with silence. Sometimes it grows in the middle of noise, in rooms full of people, in conversations that never quite reach you. It starts subtly, almost unnoticeable, just a small distance between what you see and what everyone else seems to accept without question. At first, you ignore it. You tell yourself it's nothing, just a different perspective, just the way your mind works. But then that distance begins to stretch. You start noticing things that don't align, the way people say one thing but mean another, the way emotions shift beneath carefully chosen words, the patterns in behavior, the repetitions, the contradictions that no one else seems to acknowledge. It's not that you're looking for it. It's that once you see it, it's everywhere. And the more you see, the harder it becomes to participate the way you used to. Conversations feel thinner, not because they lack words, but because they lack depth. You hear what's being said, but you also hear what's being avoided, what's being hidden between the lines. It creates a strange kind of disconnect. You're present, but not fully engaged, listening, but not convinced, responding, but not invested in the same way. People laugh and you understand the joke, but you also see the reason behind the humor. The need for approval, the attempt to fit in, the subtle tension disguised as lightness. And once you notice that, the laughter doesn't feel the same anymore. It's not that you don't want connection. It's that connection starts to feel complicated, because understanding people doesn't automatically bring you closer to them. Sometimes it does the opposite. It reveals layers that make things harder to ignore. You begin to realize that most interactions are built on things left unsaid, and you're no longer comfortable pretending those things don't exist. So you adapt. You simplify your words. You hold back your thoughts. You nod at the right moments, respond in ways that keep things smooth, even if they don't fully reflect what's in your mind. It becomes easier to blend in than to explain what you're actually thinking, because explaining it would take too long, and even then, it might not be understood. And slowly, without making a clear decision, you become more distant, not physically. You still show up, you still engage, but there's a part of you that stays separate, observing rather than fully participating. You measure your responses, filter your reactions, choose what to reveal and what to keep hidden. It's not intentional at first. It just happens because it feels safer that way. The isolation isn't loud. It doesn't demand attention. It settles in quietly, like a background presence you get used to over time. You stop expecting to be fully understood, and in doing so, you stop trying to explain yourself completely. And the strange part is, from the outside, nothing looks different. You still talk, still interact, still move through the same spaces as everyone else. But internally, there's a clear line, a separation between what you see and what others seem content not seeing, between what you think and what you choose to say. The more you notice, the more that line becomes defined. Because seeing too much doesn't just change your perspective. It changes your place among others, creating a distance that isn't always visible, but is always there, shaping the way you connect, the way you respond, the way you exist within the same world, but not quite in the same way. Self-awareness sounds like control, like clarity, like having a deeper understanding of who you are, and why you do what you do. People talk about it like it's a strength, something to strive for, something that gives you an edge. And in the beginning, it feels that way. You start noticing your patterns, your reactions, the small details in your behavior that used to go unnoticed. You feel like you're finally seeing yourself clearly. Then the clarity sharpens. You don't just notice what you do. You start questioning why you do it. Every reaction becomes something to analyze. Every emotion becomes something to break down. You don't allow yourself to simply feel anything anymore without examining it first. Even your most natural responses start to feel like something that needs to be understood, controlled, maybe even corrected. You begin to catch yourself in real time. The way your tone shifts, the way your thoughts form, the way your body reacts before your mind even catches up. It creates a strange kind of split inside you. One part of you is living the moment, while another part is watching it happen, dissecting every detail as it unfolds. And that observer doesn't stay quiet. It questions everything. Was that genuine, or was it influenced by something deeper? Did you say that because you meant it, or because you wanted a certain reaction? Are your intentions really as clear as you think they are? Or are they layered with things you haven't fully admitted to yourself yet? There's no escape from it, because it's not coming from the outside. It's you examining you, without pause, without mercy. You don't get to hide behind excuses anymore, because you see through them instantly. You don't get to ignore your contradictions, because they stand out too clearly. And the more you see, the harder it becomes to feel comfortable in your own mind. Because self-awareness doesn't just reveal your strengths. It exposes everything. The doubts you try to push away, the insecurities you thought you had control over, the habits that don't align with who you want to be. It strips away the illusions you used to rely on, leaving you with something more raw, more honest, and far less stable. You start holding yourself to a higher standard, but not in a way that feels motivating, in a way that feels relentless. You expect more from yourself because you know better, because you see more, because you can't pretend ignorance anymore. And when you fall short, it doesn't feel like a simple mistake. It feels like something you should have avoided. Even your progress becomes something you question. Are you really improving, or just becoming better at understanding your flaws? Are you actually changing, or just observing the same patterns from a different angle? It creates a cycle where growth never feels complete, because there's always another layer to uncover, another detail to examine. You don't get to rest in who you are, because who you are is always under inspection, and the line between awareness and destruction starts to blur. Because when every thought is analyzed, every feeling is questioned, and every action is examined, there's no space left for simplicity. No room to just exist without judgment. You become both the one experiencing life and the one constantly critiquing it. And those two sides don't always agree. What once felt like understanding turns into pressure. The kind that builds slowly, quietly, until it becomes something you carry without even realizing how heavy it's gotten. People are drawn to the surface. The polished version, the part that's easy to understand, easy to admire, easy to repeat in conversations like it's something simple. They notice the confidence, the control, The way you present yourself, like everything is calculated and intentional. To them, it looks like strength. It looks like certainty. It looks like you've mastered something they're still trying to figure out. They see the light, and they stay there. Because the light is comfortable. It doesn't challenge them, doesn't force them to look deeper, doesn't ask anything from them except admiration. It's easy to praise what makes sense on the surface. A sharp response, a calm reaction, a perspective that cuts through confusion, like it was designed to do exactly that. They take those moments and build an image around them, something clean, something controlled, something they can understand without effort. But they don't stay long enough to notice what sits behind it. The darkness isn't dramatic. It's not something that announces itself or demands attention. It exists quietly, in the spaces between thoughts, in the moments where everything slows down and there's nothing left to distract you. It's the part of you that doesn't fit into simple explanations, the part that carries everything you don't show. They sense it, though. Not clearly, not in a way they can explain, but enough to feel that there's something more beneath the surface. Something heavier, something harder to define, and instead of leaning into it, instead of trying to understand it, they pull back. Not out of judgment, but out of discomfort. Because the darkness asks questions they don't want to answer. It forces them to confront things they'd rather ignore. So they choose the version of you that feels safe. The version that stays within boundaries, that doesn't push too far, that doesn't reveal too much. They admire the intelligence, the clarity, the way you navigate situations with precision. But they keep a distance from anything that feels too real, too raw, too close to something they haven't dealt with in themselves. And you notice that. You see the shift in their reactions, the way conversations change when you go a little deeper, the way their interest fades when things stop being easy to digest. It's subtle, but it's there. A hesitation, a need to steer things back to safer ground. Because the moment the surface cracks, the moment something real starts to show, the admiration turns into uncertainty. Not because they don't respect it, but because they don't understand it. And what people don't understand, they rarely stay close to. So you learn to control what you show, not out of fear, but out of awareness. You recognize which parts of yourself are accepted and which ones create distance. You adjust not to fit in completely, but to keep things balanced. To give them enough to admire without forcing them to confront what they're not ready to face. The light becomes something you manage, something you present carefully, knowing it's the part that keeps people comfortable. While the darkness stays where it always has been, not hidden, just unshared, existing beneath everything they see, shaping it in ways they'll never fully recognize.